This is a Best in Climate episode of Earth Feels, where each week your hosts Rose and Christine read to you from some of the best climate-related blogs and articles on the web. As many of you will know, the United Nations Climate Summit is happening in Glasgow starting shortly in less than 2 weeks on October 31st. And today's Best in Climate episode is about an incident that took place at the TED Countdown Summit that brought together 1,000 leaders, in quotation marks, in Edinburgh, Scotland, between the October 12th and 15th. And it was billed as, according to the TED website, 4 days of inspiring talks, collaboration, connections, and commitments to meaningful action for a better world. Today's Best in Climate episode is entitled, "We Will Never Forget What You Have Done." Climate activist grills Shell CEO at TED Forum, by Brett Wilkins, published on commondreams.org on October 14th, 2021. I'm Christine, your host for this episode. Let's get started. A Scottish climate activist was hailed Thursday for poignantly challenging the CEO of Royal Dutch Shell, a company that's known since at least the 1980s that its products fuel global heating, during a TED event in Edinburgh. Quote, "I hope you know that as the climate crisis gets more and more deadly, you will be to blame." Son of a gun, a TED talk that actually amounts to something, tweeted Bill McKibben, co-founder of the climate action group 350.org, after viewing video of Lauren McDonald, a Green New Deal Rising and Stop Cambo campaigner, confronting Shell CEO Ben van Beurden. McDonald and van Beurden appeared on a panel along with hedge fund founder Chris James during the TED Countdown Summit, a $10,000 to $50,000 per ticket 4-day event described by organizers as a forum where, quote, "speakers share a blueprint for a beautiful net zero future." Looking across the stage at van Beurden, McDonald said, "No matter what he says today, remember Shell has spent millions covering up the warnings from climate scientists, bribing politicians, and even paying soldiers to kill Nigerian activists fighting against them, all whilst rebranding to make it look as though they care and that they have the intention of changing." Disproportionately in the global south, so many people are already dying due to issues related to the climate crisis, such as pollution, extreme heat, and weather-related disasters, McDonald continued, telling the CEO that, quote, "this is not an abstract issue and you are directly responsible for those deaths. If you're going to sit here and say you care about climate action, why are you currently appealing the recent court ruling that Shell must decrease its emissions by 45% by 2030, she asked, drawing audience applause. "I seriously do not understand what goes on in your mind to sit there and say, 'I'm trying to do better,' when you're appealing, being legally bound to climate action. I hope that you know that we will never forget what you have done and what Shell has done," said McDonald, adding that, "I hope you know that as the climate crisis gets more and more deadly, you will be to blame," before walking off the stage to more applause. McDonald then joined climate campaigners under the Stop Cambo and People versus Fossil Fuels banners rallying outside the summit venue against the UK government-backed Cambo oil field development off Scotland's Shetland Islands, and ahead of the United Nations Climate Conference, also known as COP26, set to begin October 31st in Glasgow. Days Aghaji, another climate activist at the rally, said, "My family is from the Niger Delta, and I know the harm Shell has caused and continues to cause by pushing us closer and closer to climate devastation. This action is the youth saying enough is enough, asking the hard questions and demanding answers. We need Shell to commit to stopping the future harm caused by projects like the Cambo oil field, Al-Haji added, but also addressing the past harm like the murder of Indigenous activists. You just listened to the post entitled, "We Will Never Forget What You Have Done. Climate Activist Grills Shell CEO at TED Forum," by Brett Wilkins, published on commondreams.org. Read under Creative Commons license. And included on this episode page is a link to the video of the confrontation discussed in this article. That's this week's episode of Best in Climate for Earth Feels.
Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's a mission for you and for